All right, let's get at it here. College football week 4 underway. Not much of a game last night with South Alabama and App State, but the games look promising here tonight. And we've got 5 games, in fact, coming up tomorrow that are going to be real interesting. And we're going to get thoughts, opinions, picks from these 3 guys here today on a Friday as we welcome in the one and only Jesse Schule in the house, ready to roll here tonight, as is BL, Bryan, Leonard, and of course, Mr. TC, Teddy Covers, ready to roll on what should be a hell of a week 4 here in college football. And as always, we appreciate you guys joining us, and any questions on any games this slate that you may have, drop them in the one of many chat rooms that we are live and operational right now. Is Jesse Schule stepping up first. And Jesse, interesting game here. Everyone loves a good car crash. No better car crash than Dion in Colorado. But is Baylor the team that's going to keep the misery rolling here? How do you approach Colorado and Baylor this weekend?
Sounds like I approach Colorado the same way you do, Joe. Colorado's got a pretty loyal fan base. There's a lot of supporters for Coach Prime, and they don't like it very much when guys like us talk bad about their team. And they had the last laugh last week. I was heavy on the Rams in that rivalry game. I really thought the Colorado State Rams would give them a run for their money, in that rematch of that double overtime game. And, they're letting me have it on Twitter this week, but that's fine. I'm kind of rubbing my hands together. I can hear people talking about Colorado is going to win 8 games this year. They're a dark horse in the Big 12. Let's pump the brakes on some of the excitement about Colorado. Their strength of schedule and their wins isn't very good. When they did play Nebraska, it was 28-0 at halftime. But I'm not going to touch the side here, Joe. I'm actually cheering for Colorado because if I look at their schedule, I see they've got UCF on deck. They're going to the bounce house. So I hope they win this game and they go into the bounce house overrated, and I can make a little bit of money betting against them. But as far as Baylor goes, it's tough to know what they're going to bring to the table. They got a backup quarterback. They haven't really played anybody. They're not expected to be very good. But I think Baylor can run the ball. I still don't think Colorado can stop the run. I think Colorado is going to get their points. And there was some interesting line movement earlier this week. I don't have the exact number of this total, but it was closer to 55 than it was to 50 at open. And all of a sudden, bang, somebody with deeper pockets than myself, that wouldn't take much, by the way, but put some money on the under. It moved, I think, 2 or 3 points overnight to the under. And I disagree with that line move. I look at why somebody would think that. And okay, well, Baylor's gone under in all 3 of their games. Colorado's gone under in all 3 of their games, depending on what line you had in the game against North Dakota State. I think the opening line there was 59. It got bet down a little bit before game time, so you could have cashed on either side of that total. But you look at how these games have played out. I mean, the 28-0 against Nebraska, and Matt Rule shuts the game down in the second half. Wasn't a competitive game. No need to really run up the score. And then last week, the same thing. Colorado goes up big. They shut the game down. Unlike Dion, actually, not running up the score. But you look back to that North Dakota State game. North Dakota State scores 20 points in the first half. They were running all over the Buffaloes. I think Baylor can do a little bit of that. I don't think Baylor can stop Colorado. I think we'll see points in this game. I will take the over 51.
All right, so let me ask you this here, Jesse, just as a side note. Maybe we can have a side wager, you and I, in this game. Over or under 50 rushing yards for Colorado in this game? Do they have, and how many times do you think they'll run it? I think less than 10, and there's no way to get to 50 yards rushing because Dion refuses to actually run the ball against anybody.
Yeah, it probably correlates with my over because if they get over 50 rushing yards, my over is shot.
Yeah, exactly correct. So we're going to shoot for the under 50.
One more thing I want to mention, Joe.
Go ahead.
You know as well as I do, there's a lot of people out there that say Colorado is a great team. They're just so fantastic. And I don't think people realize that that win over North Dakota State wasn't as rosy as it appeared to be. A lot of people tell me, oh, North Dakota State, they're the Alabama of the FCS. They're monsters down there in the FCS. Well, to be honest, that's not exactly true. They used to be. The current version isn't. I mean, they just barely sneaked out a road win against a nobody last week. And I don't claim to be the guru of the FCS, but I pay enough attention to know that they're no longer the big kid on the block in the FCS. So that win over North Dakota State, 31-26, Dion passing at the end of the game when he could have run out the clock, that's another sign that, points me toward the over in this game.
Yeah, when you get 55 new scholarship players, it's kind of hard to get that to gel together rather quickly, Jess. So Baylor and Colorado should be extremely interesting, as we can only hope for more of a dumpster fire. Dion is much more fun in press conferences when he gets his ass handed to him. It's great stuff. Bryan, Leonard in the house, ready to roll here on another big game coming up. This one's interesting, too, with K-State's taking on BYU. K-State, interesting game coming up against my Oklahoma State Cowboys, but that's a story for a different day. In the meantime, I believe I read somewhere the comparisons of this BYU quarterback to Taysom Hill, back in the Taysom Hill days. Same type of thing. Tough-nosed kid, can run all over the place, occasionally make a pass here or there. Are you buying BYU being competitive in this one, taking over K-State, maybe in a look-ahead situation?
Maybe not. I'm looking at the Wildcats here. I expect them to battle Utah and Central Florida for the top of this conference. They took care of a decent Arizona team, 31-7 last week at home. A nice defensive bounce back after they allowed Tulane 27 a week before in a 7-point Kansas State victory. The Wildcats have dominated the line of play early on. They're averaging 6.98 yards per carry while allowing just 2.56. And against this BYU team, I think that's a very important stat, is the line is going to tell you who is going to win this game, and that's the offensive and defensive lines. BYU got a taste of Big 12 play a year ago, and they dropped their last 5 games of the season by a combined 188-84 margin. And while the Cougars are a perfect 3-0 on the season, they've yet to play anyone of significance. They opened the season hosting Southern Illinois. Then they played SMU and Wyoming on the road, and neither of those two latter clubs has played up to their preseason expectations at all. Because of missions, BYU traditionally is very strong on the lines, but that hasn't been the case since joining this conference. They've done a good job defending the pass thus far, but this Wildcats passing game is far superior to what they've seen so far this season. The line in this game bounced between 6.5 and 7 all week long. And for my friend Kelly in Vegas, I will lean with Kansas State here. As long as you're laying 7 or less, I think this is the better way to go. BYU is traditionally pretty strong at home, but they just don't seem to have as much talent right now as they've had in the past. Kansas State is a legit team. BYU is not. Never like laying points into BYU at home, but I think the line is fair here. We can get 6.5 or 7. Kansas State's the side I'll be on.
Ooh, all right. K-State getting it done in the altitude there against BYU. That game is pretty late too, right? Is that the last game on the slate there, Bryan? If I'm not mistaken, that's going to be the late night degenerate special for many, I believe, as I'm showing a kickoff of 10:30 Eastern time there at Edwards Stadium. So that'll be the last game of the night on the slate. BYU and Kansas State. Not the last game of the night, but it may set football back 60 years, Teddy Covers, is the game you've got coming in, because if you like defense and running the football, boy, this is one you're going to want to tune into, as Minnesota at home as a dog taking on Iowa. And we were talking about this game before the show, Teddy, and I just can't justify Iowa being a road favorite against this Minnesota team, because I have Minnesota's defense pretty damn good as well as Minnesota, and I'm just not sold on Iowa's offense. I mean, call me crazy. I know Ferentz ain't there anymore, Are you buying Iowa as a road favorite in this one against Minnesota?
I don't want the dog. So the Iowa passed me. And my first reaction was to look at the Iowa side in this ballgame. And the more I looked at it, the less I liked it. That being said, at less than a field goal, the price is reasonable. And I do think that Iowa is the better of these two teams. I know Minnesota has just pitched back-to-back shutouts. All right. I'm well aware of that. And I know that Iowa lost their step-up game to Iowa State. Well, Minnesota lost their step-up game to North Carolina as well. Kickers, if you remember, in that contest. But in all three of those games for Minnesota, we've seen that defense dominate. Back-to-back shutouts. And even the game against North Carolina wasn't like the Tar Heels offense. And admittedly, first game of the season, they just sent a quarterback to the NFL. They just sent receivers to the NFL. But it's not like that Tar Heels offense was marching up and down the field. Minnesota's defense was more than capable, even on the outside, of hanging with the speedy North Carolina receivers. When we look at the Minnesota offense, I mean, look, they don't have a passing play of 40 yards yet this season. They had one rush in the middle game. Darius Taylor had an 80-yard touchdown rush. Other than that, they don't have a rush of longer than 20 yards. This is a dink and dunk offense. Iowa's defense is still every bit as elite as it's been. All right. And yet, the Hawkeyes, 3-0 to the over so far this season because the offense has been better. You know, they hung 40. They hung 38. That's not what we've seen from Iowa offensively in Ferentz Jr. as offense coordinator days. And obviously, we've been hearing that this offense is supposed to be better for the last, 5 seasons. We're seeing signs of it this year. So I do think Iowa merits being a road favorite in this ballgame. That said, the better play here is the total, not the side. Look, what did we see last year? 12-10 final. What did we see the year before? 13-10 final. We have a total that opened at least a little bit higher than it probably should have. And we've seen under money because Iowa's 3-0 to the over this season. I don't think that continues. Under. Another defensive slugfest. Another game where points are very hard to come by. This is what these two teams have done. Again, 12-10, 13-10 the last two meetings. I'm expecting more of the same on Saturday night in Minneapolis.
Yep, first 1 to 3 wins, no doubt, Teddy. Should be a barn burner of a game. That's what I'm expecting. Should be a great one. Oh my God, snooze fest. John Finley in the chat, outstanding. Good to see you again, John. Says, what's the over-under? 20? You'd be lucky to get to 20, I think, in this one. And there's just something about Ferentz and PJ Fleck going at one another that just screams, look at Big Ten football. This should be a whole lot of fun on that one. There are 2 games, though, with a whole lot riding on the line for these 4 teams, as they are 2 of the 4 top 25 versus top 25 games on the board this week. Utah, Oklahoma State, Tennessee, Oklahoma. And do want to invite those of you joining us here live on the broadcast to drop any questions about any games that you may have here. We'll get to those at the end. And for those watching it on the rewatch here, go ahead and drop any questions you may have about any games here in the comments section, and we will certainly answer them and get you as much information as possible, since we're always hanging out in the comment section and the chat rooms. So, gentlemen, we've got Utah taking on Oklahoma State. Now, I may be a little biased here, but I can't promise the mic is going to work if anybody's going Utah. I'm just saying right now, we'll get that out in front here as my Oklahoma State Cowboys are... Boy, you want to talk about a line being all over the place here, Jesse. This was look ahead, Oklahoma State, a slight favorite. Oh, Cam Rising might be playing. Now Oklahoma State's getting 2.5. Now Cam Rising's not playing. Oklahoma State's back to being a favorite. The truth probably lies somewhere in the middle there. How do you approach Utah and Oklahoma State in this one?
Well, if you're looking for the truth, just don't ask Kyle Whittingham, because he hasn't been very truthful about the injury reports. And the line movement to me would suggest that, and I don't know if you guys have heard otherwise, but it sounds like rumors. It's based on rumors more than facts. So I don't know what I'd have a tough time betting on this, not knowing exactly what's going on with Cam Rising. The Zach Wilson's little brother looked quite capable. I was ready to go all in on the Utes team total over, based on the fact that I just don't like what I see from Oklahoma State defensively. That game against Arkansas, Arkansas outgains them 648 to 385 in total yards. You don't see that very often. Utah, I believe, is the number one ranked red zone offense so far. And, they're going to say, well, they haven't played anybody. But, there's a long list of teams that haven't played anybody. So if you're ranking at the top of that list, to me, it still says something. And Utah was the preseason favorite to win the Big 12. One of the things, luckily for myself, is my futures card coming into the season. I have Oklahoma State winning the Big 12 at plus 700, and I got Utah making the playoffs at plus 260. And when I looked on the schedule and saw this game, I presumed, or I hypothesized, that Utah would get this one and Oklahoma State would get the revenge in the Big 12 title game. So that's what I'm cheering for. If news comes out that Rising's playing, I'm probably on Utah in one way or the other. The team total looks pretty inviting to me.
You bring up a good point, Jesse, there. I mean, Bryan Leonard, Kyle Whittingham might be the one guy I would take absolutely nothing that comes out, and he runs a pretty tight ship. So I'm just amazed about the overreaction. Is it head fakes? Like, what in the world? We thought Cam Rising was playing 2 weeks ago. We thought he'd be playing last week, and now Whittingham certainly hasn't told anybody what the plan is. But, I mean, 2 moves like that within the same week, and we know nothing? What's going on with this line?
Yeah, it's so hard, as was pointed out earlier, it's so hard to make a decision if you don't know who the quarterback is going to be. But that's what we're getting out of Utah. We've gotten it for the last few years. You never know who's going to be out there. I expect this to be probably the best game of the weekend. Very competitive. The line keeps bouncing around the Pick'em area, so a lot of people agree. But I think there's a lot of pressure on the Utes here entering the new conference as a betting favorite. With Cam Rising, you never know if he's healthy or not. You never know if he's going to last in the whole game or not. So that is something you always have to take into account when you're looking to play the Utes. As was mentioned just this week, his status is up in the air again. He's going to play. He's not going to play. Utah hasn't been challenged as of yet, so this is a key game on their schedule. And Oklahoma State has one of the most talented offenses in college football, no doubt. But they're only averaging 3.37 yards per carry. They haven't been able to get that running game going as of yet. And this Utah team can stop the run. The Cowboys' passing game is what they win with, but the Utes have been very good defending the pass thus far. Now, obviously, they haven't faced the kind of talent that Oklahoma State has, so that's something that we have to take into account here. But you got 2 teams with solid depth in a game that could go either way. It's just so tough to be able to pick this one. I think it goes down to the wire, regardless of who's quarterbacking for Utah. I think it's going to be a very exciting game. If Utah can stop the Oklahoma State, at least slow down the Oklahoma State passing game, I think they can control this. I like the Utah line play, but the line is about where it should be. I don't think there's any advantage from either side from the line situation. So I'll just watch this game. Hopefully we can learn something for the future, but it won't be on my card this week.
It is tough, Teddy, to take, even if Cam Rising goes. What the hell are you going to get from him? There's so many question marks about Cam Rising and Utah, but what has been your experience when you see this? Oklahoma State in Stillwater, one of the toughest places to play. Utah's going to come rolling in. Everyone bets them. Then it comes the other way. Now we're all kind of sitting. But Cam Rising's probably running out on the field and going to start. And then what happens? What is usually the overreaction caused in the market by such a wild swing in a game like this?
So I don't even know how to answer your question, Joe, so I'm going to ignore it and move on to what I was going to talk about.
Go ahead.
I apologize. I got a bunch of numbers in my head.
But I mean, this isn't OU. My point is, Teddy, this isn't OU Oklahoma State. It's not. There's no history here, which is just very strange that the line would be that crazy in a matter of 72 hours. It seems very weird when we don't know anything about these two teams. Don't know anything about one another.
So the line movement and jumping up and down, there are 2 factors in that. One is Rising, obviously, in, out, in, out, in, out. And I'll be honest, if I'm taking Utah in this game, I don't know that I want Rising out there. I'll pay for Rising. You know what I mean? You have to pay a price.
Yep.
The money pours in on Oklahoma State, and I'm catching Utah a field goal or higher, if Rising doesn't play. That's when I'm most interested in the Utah side. I like Utah better if Rising doesn't play. Isaac Wilson, again, we're talking about a kid who, his brother is a pretty good quarterback, Zach, that plays in the NFL. And regardless of what you say about his NFL career, his college career was great. And Isaac Wilson has certainly shown, I don't think there's an enormous drop-off, even between a senior QB who hasn't been practicing and a very talented freshman. But the trends are all pointing the other way. I mean, they trend strongly the other way. We talked about what Oklahoma State 23-3 straight up on this field the last 4 years. Gundy was a home dog 3 times last year, Kansas State, Oklahoma. And the Cowboys won all 3 of those games straight up. You look at Whittingham as road chalk. I got him at 3-9 ATS his last 12 tries.
Oof.
So all the trends point towards the home dog in this ball game. I just think the road favorite's a better team. And I'll take Whittingham over anybody when it comes to getting his team ready for big games. Literally, I'll take Whittingham over just about anyone in college football in that regard. So the lean here is Utah. You don't have to mute me. But I like Utah better if Rising doesn't play. You bet them right before kickoff.
I tell you, that's a great point, because that will you'll be able to get a much better number for Utah if he's announced out prior to that game. So I didn't realize, wow, that trend is disgusting. I didn't realize it was that bad in that spot. So Oklahoma State taking on Utah, 2 top 25 teams here with a lot riding in the Big 12. Another very interesting one in the SEC with a couple of top teams here, with Tennessee taking on Oklahoma, OU, whose offense has been less than spectacular. Josh Heupel and company. Fun fact, by the way, Josh Heupel going back to Norman, where he actually won a national championship back in 2000 as their quarterback. You know who the defensive coordinator happened to be on that Oklahoma team that won the national championship? Yeah, it's the head coach of OU right now. So these two guys know each other pretty well. Let me start with you, Jesse, here. Tennessee expecting points. Can the defense of OU slow them down enough to win this game?
I don't think so, Joe. I think there's something that I like to refer to as a freeze point. And Teddy might be more eloquent at explaining this than I am, but I'll give it a go. I think when you have an elite offense with an elite head coach and you've got the right players, the right personnel, the athletes, the speed, I think very good defenses are no better than average defenses against such an offense. And some people will say it's too early to give that credit to Tennessee. They haven't played anybody yet. Sure, they're putting up 70 points on the minnows of college football, but we have seen this offense with different personnel, this Josh Heupel scheme. They put up 52 points on Alabama 2 years ago. They won that game. And Joe Milton didn't work out for them last year for whatever reason. One of their best wide receivers was injured for the majority of the year. So, last year they didn't really get off the ground. This year they look like they're right back to their form of 2022. And I think if you want to beat this Tennessee team, you either have to have the best defense in college football, like the 2022 Georgia Bulldogs, or you have to score 40 or 50 points. And I don't see Oklahoma possessing either of those two qualities. That 16-point home win over when they scored 16 points against a pretty terrible Houston team was a big warning sign. The offensive line hasn't seemed to, you get a bunch of transfers. You try to build a makeshift offensive line. It seems like that's held together by bubble gum and duct tape. I don't think that's going to work out here. I just think Tennessee's going to run away with this game. I think 7 points is a pretty fair number.
7 points, it is 6.5, 7, kind of going back and forth there between it. I guess it really just depends, Bryan Leonard, on whether or not you think Tennessee's defense is for real. We're going to find out, since this is their really first true road game. I don't count whatever that was in North Carolina and Charlotte there. That's not really crazy road, more of a neutral site game, but it's a tough place to play. How much faith do you have in Tennessee being able to shut the door defensively on OU?
Well, Joe, we've done enough shows together over the years that I'm a value player. Mm-hmm. So the first thing I wanted to look at here was Oklahoma. coming into the season. I believe the look-ahead line was about 2. Now we're looking at like 7. But this isn't the same Oklahoma team, and they're playing in a tougher conference here. They're not up to prior editions offensively. I've read some things from OU fans and some of the press saying that they didn't open up the playbook in the other games, and they'll do it here. Well, if you haven't practiced it and you haven't used it before, and now you're playing the toughest defense that you've faced so far, I'm not so sure that's a recipe for success. I think it's an uphill battle for the Sooners this year in this conference. Their defense is excellent once again, but I do have questions about this offense. To me, Tennessee is the better team. The problem is you're playing them at a high. And I talk about this all the time. It's like the stock market. You aren't going to get rich betting on the teams and the stocks that everybody else loves. You need to find them in a dip and then bet on them. And that's not the Volunteers right now. As I said, that it's already gone up, from 2 to 7 based on how they've played thus far. But, I know they haven't played anybody, but they've outscored them 191 to 13. There's not too many other teams in college football that have that ability. Josh Heupel is a guy who's been a dominant bully, and he has beat the hell out of these teams since he's been a head coach, and especially in the first half. I think in the first half we'll be able to see what happens here. If Tennessee takes a nice early lead here, I think Oklahoma's done. I just don't think their offense has that ability to come back. So if we see what we've seen out of Tennessee and they get that big lead, the best bet may be just to play them in the second half, because they still will try to run up the score because it is Oklahoma. And as you mentioned, Heupel had been there before and had a lot of success. So 7 seems to be a fair number here. I'm not going to stand in front of Tennessee. And even though I'm a value player, I don't think there's value on Oklahoma here. I do have some concerns about the Sooners.
There was a lot of concerns, Teddy, to start the year that OU lost all 5 of their starting offensive linemen a year ago. So the whole thing was a rebuild. And as talented as this Jackson Arnold kid and what they thought he was, new receivers, new offensive line, but they're running out of games to figure it out. And I don't know that Tennessee is a great game if you're trailing to want to try to come behind and put it all together. The offense is just not there. Is this one of these situations? Is the OU defense good enough to keep this game low scoring enough to get a cover in this one?
No.
I didn't think so.
I mean, we're all on the same page.
Yep.
We really are. And I'm going to start with the Tennessee side of the equation. Look, this team, they're going to score on the road in the SEC under Heupel. They hung 62 at Missouri. They won 40-13 at LSU. They hung 45 at Kentucky. They hung 56 at Vandy. They hung 51 versus NC State on a neutral already this year. All right, this offense is capable and likely, in my mind, to score touchdowns and potentially touchdowns in bunches. I'm not worried about that, so when we talk about this line, let's be really clear, all right? Books that open earliest. You have Circa here in Vegas, you have Bet Online offshore, and then you have DK for most of the states. DK hung a 2, which was a bad line. Circa hung a 6, BOL hung a 7. And when someone hangs a bad line, that doesn't mean the whole market moved there. It means that one book that hung a bad line now has liability on that side, and that would be DK. So I'm not overly worried. This hasn't been a huge line move in favor of Oklahoma. There was one book that has been a huge line move. And a huge line move towards Tennessee. Mm-hmm. It's littler than you think it might be. And the basic sentiment of Oklahoma not being offensively challenged that everyone's talking about, it's real. When you lose all 5 starters in the offensive line, including a first-round NFL draft choice, and then the guys who are supposed to replace them get hurt, which is what happened with them. This is a really banged-up offensive line right now, which is an all-new offensive line, a replacement offensive line for what they were supposed to have, what they had last year. They got wide receiver injuries. They're not trading points. Tennessee or pass for this bet.
Kind of hard to look anywhere else there. And if you guys don't know, we talked about it on Bet On It, the college football edition. Just Josh Heupel's numbers at Tennessee and UCF as a head coach, and Bryan nailed it. They are bullies, and they cover in the first half in just about every game. They are absolute monsters. They play from in front. They never trail. It's 4.5 Tennessee in the first half. If it ain't broke, might as well not fix it there with Tennessee. Also, this I thought was broke, but it's not. Apparently, this is a real promotion, and I thought this was completely out of their mind there in Detroit, giving people 50% off here on day packages. But that's exactly what you can get right now over at WagerTalk.com. That is 50% off any one of these guys' daily picks here. 1 day all access pass, 50% off right now. You can take advantage visiting Jesse Schule as well as Bryan Leonard, as well as Teddy Covers. These guys also have some plays locked and loaded we're going to tell you about coming up, including, I believe, a 5% play or two that might be available. Again, 50% off over at WagerTalk.com. Visit Teddy, visit Bryan Leonard, and, of course, Jesse Schule. Not a bad way to head into week 4 of the college football season. I am seeing some questions rolling in the chat room, so we'll run through a couple of these to get your thoughts on them, guys, if you have any. And, of course, you know the amount of, what is that, the Ole Miss versus Georgia. Yeah, so Ole Miss is laying 5 touchdowns, I believe, in this one. Shocker that Lane Kiffin's teams would be laying this many points. Let me go to you here, Bryan Leonard. Are you shocked here that Ole Miss is laying this kind of... I wouldn't be afraid to lay it, but I'm nuts like that. I just think Lane Kiffin, this is the kind of game he's going to drop 70 points on you if he can. The question is, do you think he can?
Well, they can if they want to. Anytime you've got a line of 35, if the team wants to cover that number, they can do it. We've seen that out of Penn State for how many years? I mean, there's certain coaches that want to get up there and run up the score. Georgia Southern's got to be able to run the football and keep it away from Mississippi in order to compete in this one. I think the line's fair at 35. I didn't see any advantage, so it won't be on my card. But Mississippi, if they want to show up, they can pass this total, no problem at all.
3-0 against the number. They have beaten their opponents by an average score of 56-3. Jesus, Lane. He is just going to go scorched earth on everybody. Also, along those same lines, Teddy, Ohio State laying 40 against Marshall. I can't think of a guy I trust less to win a game by 40 points than Ryan Day and Ohio State. It's just not a great situation here. I thought the Herd looked pretty good defensively against Virginia Tech, but there's no way I'm laying 40 points with Ohio State. You?
No, I mean, so in general, if I'm playing one of these games, 5 touchdowns or higher,
right? I'm
only on the favorite. All right. The line is, certainly at this stage of the season, sometimes in November, you'll find these teams laying big prices and they're, it's a game they're just not interested in. When you talk about late season non-conference play, but in early season non-conference play, I only want the big favorite. The dog can cover in these games in 2 instances. 1, if the favorite runs out of steam, and if 2, the favorite's completely not interested. But other than that, these are mismatches. They're class difference games, and you're relying on the benevolence of the favorite not to cover the number. Do we love the spot for Ohio State? We don't. Then again, they've had extra time. They've got only Sparty on deck. It's not like it's a situation where Ohio State's in a big look ahead. If I'm playing, I'm laying. I do not think Marshall's going to hang around in this game for more than, about 2 minutes. Maybe 5 minutes.
At least a minute, Teddy. Let's not get crazy here. Jesse Schule, let me ask you a lot of questions in the chat regarding the U. Miami taking on South Florida. I don't know how big a believer are you in the U. But nobody wants to seem to run to the window to lay 16 and a half with them against South Florida here. Are you a believer in Mario Cristobal and the University of Miami just to steamroll everyone this year?
Absolutely, Joe. I believe I did go on last call and give out the U's regular season win total over. On my futures card at WagerTalk. I got the U at plus 450 to win the ACC, and we certainly don't want to count our chickens, but that's looking a lot better now than it did before the season started. Never mind Mario Cristobal. I mean, Cam Ward, a monstrous offensive and defensive line, the running backs, the depth. I mean, this is too good to screw up, in my opinion. It could be a tricky game for the U, but I think you got to be a fool to be stepping in front of the U at this point.
Yeah, we agree 100% there. Bryan, I'm getting a couple of questions over on TikTok about how in the hell is Florida State laying 2.5 points? Why are they a favorite again for the 4th straight game? They already have embarrassed themselves 3 games in a row. Cal and I believe Justin Wilcox, one of the better dogs in his career at Cal. But it just feels like, are they begging us to take Cal? I don't. What do we do here?
It's got to be the due system, right?
Yeah.
They're due for a good outing. Problem is, they're playing a team that travels the entire country to go in to play this game in a different conference.
Yeah.
It makes it tough to play California. You're right. He is an excellent underdog, but the line to 2.5. I'd rather have him catching 20 against USC or something. I think that's where we make our money on California. I really don't want either part of this game. From a talent standpoint, yes, you would think Florida State, but they come into the season. Many expected them to have, if not the best, one of the best defenses in college football. And there's a lot of people that go to school in Florida, and let's just say they're not going for an education. Mm-hmm. And they're down there thinking they're going to be a big shot football program this year, and then all of a sudden they come out and play the way they have. I'm not going to put your money on Florida State in this one. This is a clear pass for me.
Yeah, it's a brutal one. Teddy, more egregious though, Florida State being a favorite or Florida being a touchdown favorite on the road against Mississippi State? Because let's be realistic, that's just as disgusting as Florida State being a favorite here. What do you think?
Yeah, I did a big game breakdown of this earlier in the week on WagerTalk today, and yeah, I made the case for the road favorite in this ball game. I don't know that it's a compelling case necessarily, but it's a case nonetheless. Big difference between Florida State and Florida this week. All right, one team's getting out of town, and one team's staying in town. And when I have a team on a skid, when I have a team that's struggling, I want them on the road. I don't want them in front of the home crowd. I don't want them in the same routine. I want them in a different routine. I don't want the crowd booing as soon as they make their first mistake. In my experience, I'd much rather have the team that's, even though it sounds counterintuitive, the team that's facing adversity, I want them on the highway, not at home. Oftentimes I found that to be leaving home is a good thing for teams like the Florida Gators, not a bad thing. And of course, Mississippi State ain't no good, I mean, maybe there's some things to like about Cal. I'm not seeing a whole lot that I like about Mississippi State. We saw it again last week. They got absolutely annihilated. Pretty embarrassing performance. I'm not convinced it gets a whole lot better in Starkville this time around. So, frankly, if I'm playing, I'm laying. I can only take the favorite in that ball game.
Yeah,
that's what I think of Mississippi State.
Yeah, he's having a great season, Jeff. Blow it up start from scratch there, Jeff. You'll be good to go. All right, we got one more game coming in, and Jesse, I'm going to ask you because I've seen it a couple of times here. Does anybody want to bet Arizona State? Because I haven't met anybody. Everyone seems to love Texas Tech at home in Lubbock. You trust Texas Tech? My goodness. Arizona State just continues to go out, and is it overperform or did we undervalue them? It's an interesting spot, but nobody wants to seem to back Arizona State here. What do you think?
I'll back Arizona State. And yeah, I think the answer to your question, did they overperform or did we undervalue them? I think we did undervalue them. If you look at their team talent composite rankings, they have a top 30 national team talent composite. This team should be competitive. They've got a decent head coach. The quarterback they brought in, he seemed, they did some great work with the transfer portal. They brought in a ton of new guys from big Power 5 teams, and everything seems to be working out. Texas Tech, that debacle in their first game where they probably should have lost. Who was it? I don't even know. Albion Christian or Abilene.
Yep, Abilene
Christian. One of those. Abilene Christian, yeah. And then they get smoked by a former Pac-12 team. And I know people just hate the Pac-12. There's a lot of Pac-12 hate out there, Joe. There's a lot of college football fans that are anywhere east of California and the Pacific Northwest. They hate on the Pac-12. Well, the Pac-12 is not the whipping boy of college football anymore. The former Pac-12 teams have all really overachieved if you really look around. And I think this Arizona, you look at what they did against Texas State, and this looks like a very similar game. I mean, it looks like the same game plan should work out here against Texas Tech. So I would be inclined to take the points or even a little sprinkle on the money line or 50-50 with Arizona State.
You think it's just as good a shot in order to be able to get it done there. And Teddy, I lied because multiple people are now jumping in and said, Teddy, tell me about Michigan. What about Michigan, Teddy? Does Michigan... Listen, can we all agree to the point now, Teddy, that if Michigan is getting points at home, there might be a reason for it? I'm just saying, are we at that point yet? Or has the market completely lost their mind, continuing to give this team almost a touchdown in points?
I don't think the market's lost their mind at all. Look, Michigan, we saw it already. You want to see it again this weekend? USC is not as good as Texas. So I don't know if it'll be a beat down the level of Texas. All right. But Michigan isn't at that level this year. All right. And changing the quarterback. Okay, here's Orgy coming in this week. Great. Is that going to make a difference? It's not necessarily the quarterback. Quarterback play hasn't been good, but the offensive line play hasn't been good. The wide receiver play hasn't been good. I'm not convinced that changes here. And USC, I watched them live. And defensively, they came into the season, everyone going, this defense sucks. And last year, the defense was awful. And obviously, they bring in the DC and Lynn from UCLA. I watched them flying around the field against the LSU. There was nothing fraudulent about that defensive performance. There was nothing fraudulent about their last game defensively. If USC's defense is at this level, they'll win this game by double digits. If not, maybe Michigan gives them a game. But I still don't believe the Wolverines are a team that I want my money on yet. They've yet to cover a point spread this year, and I'm not convinced they cover this week.
Market might very well be onto something here with Michigan these days here. All right, we told you about a 50% off opportunity, and I believe, Bryan, Leonard, you got a 5% play available right now over at your page at WagerTalk?
I do. 5% play in Major League Baseball. It's only our 11th on the season. 7-3 on the year, and I play a lot of underdogs, so our net profit is even higher when it comes to that. So we've got that big 5% play, and today, obviously, we talked about that a little earlier, 50% off. So this is a great day to buy it. And as opposed to Teddy, he mentioned orgy. I'm up for any type of orgy. It's a pile. People should be piling on that game because it's such a great orgy.
Writes itself, people. It writes itself. Jesse Schule, what do you got locked, loaded, ready to roll here for folks they can get 50% off on?
I do have a 5% play in Major League Baseball, and I'm rolling with the Major League Baseball top plays. The streak that I will give you is 15-1 with my last 16. That's 4% and 5% Major League Baseball. But pretty stellar. Hope to make it 16-1 after tonight's game.
Care to pile on there, Teddy, at all on what you got available at your page at WagerTalk?
We're in action tonight. Nebraska, Illinois. You can get that winner on my page, half off. Obviously, everything half off. Locked and loaded with a 5-play college football weekend in total. And, of course, the NFL up and available as well on a nice 67% NFL hot streak over the last month. So making money right now. Check it out, WT.buzz/TC. And, again, half off packages today. Great day to get on board.
No, really no reason, guys, not to make this a very profitable week 4 in college football, week 3 in the NFL. And then, of course, Plenty of opportunities, like Bryan Leonard just told you, in Major League Baseball. Still regular season wrapping up, postseason here. Still some inefficiencies in that market you can jump on. So head over to their pages at WagerTalk.com. Make sure you give us a thumbs up, a like button. That would be fantastic. Follow us on Instagram as well as TikTok. Those of you joining us on YouTube, always a pleasure, guys, to see you. And once again, if you're joining us here on the rewatch, drop those questions in the comments. Any of the games we might not have covered that you're interested in, we will monitor the comment section right up until kickoff here and do our very best to get you all the answers to all your questions. So, on behalf of Jesse, Bryan, and Teddy, guys, as always, we appreciate the time. Week 4 is here in the college football season. We'll be back again next Thursday and Friday for another edition of the College Football Kickoff Show. In the meantime, check out this video on your screen right now. Another one of these big game previews coming up this weekend, just a click away. Best of luck with the plays. We'll talk to you again next week.